If you're not smiling this morning, ladies and gentlemen, well, there must be something wrong, because that is as good as it gets for Irish sport. A man whose greatest fear is Westmeath winning in All-Ireland is the sole owner of the Claret Jug right now. It's a beautiful morning for Irish sport. Anthony Moyles, how are you?
I'm good, on. I'm great.
Nathan Murphy, how are you?
I'm very good, on.
A friend of the pod is the Open champion. Congratulations to you.
It's a victory for all of us.
It really is. You were up there yesterday. I think we just have to start with that, and I think we're going to start with that, and the middle of today's show will be Shane Lowry, and the end of today's show will be Shane Lowry. It's especially an extended show, by the way, for everybody this morning on OTB AM. What was it like?
Magical. Magical. The whole week was just this sort of out-of-body experience. You're watching this thinking, can this actually be happening? That an Open Championship is taking place on this island, and Shane Lowry, already one of, if not our most popular sports people, isn't just winning this, he's destroying the field. Like, you think of our great sporting moments, there's always an air of the unexpected or the dramatic. Raj kicking the drop goal in the last minute when it all looks dead and buried. Any of our great footballing successes sort of come out of the blue. We're going into those matches as complete underdogs. But for him to go out and play like that in the final round of an Open Championship, and to be walking up 18, to be able to celebrate on the fairway. He said how, like everybody, anybody who's ever picked up a golf club has stood on a green against their mates and gone, this is for the Open Championship, and a little bit of pressure ramps up. Like that's the moment everyone dreams of. You never think, I'm going to have it won on the fairway or 2 holes in advance when he has a 6-shot lead. And just the atmosphere was unlike anything anyone has ever seen at the Open Championship. This isn't just me speaking. I spoke to American journalists who've been covering them for 30, 40 years. Yeah. Just the partisan nature of the crowd. And I don't think that will ever be replicated, because when they're in America, it's a very divided country, and they get behind the American. If it's in England, if it's Tommy Fleetwood, well, not that many people know him. Everyone feels like they know Shane Lowry. Yeah. Everyone's met Shane Lowry more than likely, whether it's at an Irish Open or just out and about or at a GA match. Everyone kind of feels in that sort of Irish way that they have a little part of him. So to have him do that on an Irish course, I think everybody realised the immense history that they were watching. And that just followed on from 4 days, or from 3 days in particular, from starting with McIlroy on Friday evening, where the scenes were quite similar when he's trying to make the cut. Yeah. And you've thousands of people congregating around this one group to see if their local boy can somehow salvage it out of the fire. To what Lowry did on Saturday, which is one of, if not the greatest rounds of golf any Irish player has ever played at a major championship. That spell of 15, 16, 17, when he probably won the tournament with the 3 birdies, was a bit surreal. It happened in the space of 15 minutes, and you're thinking, this is going to happen. He has played just flawless golf. And then yesterday, when it wasn't a straightforward 4-shot lead in those conditions, worsening conditions, even that first hole, and look, there were huge nerves, and he didn't hit a great tee shot off the first, but everyone was coming up well short of the bunkers. He just about made the fairway over in the rough on the left-hand side. Like, there could have been a huge swing there. Tommy Fleetwood misses a birdie putt. Lowry holds his bogey putt. Could have been a 3-shot swing. Ends up in a 1-shot swing. And there was never any great tension after that, I felt. Fleetwood never put the pressure on. That in what became apparent very quickly was going to be a shootout between the two of them. You needed the man who's chasing to have one moment, and he had his chances. There were probably 4 or 5 where you felt if he hold the putt that maybe Lowry might crumble, but to go on then in those conditions, it was horrific. Coming out of the course last night, all the roads around were completely flooded. It was torrential rain, driving winds for a good 40 minutes, and I'd say that was the only time he was worried, because an element of luck and lottery sort of comes into it when it's that bad. Right. But to shoot 72, I was having a look there, of the last 12 groups that went out, and they were the ones who played in the bad weather, he shot the second best score. Only Tony Finau shot a better score. And to do that under that level of pressure. So there's a part of it that's, wow, it's this great thing because it's Shane Lowry and he's such a nice guy. And there's another part, he's actually produced this stunning golfing performance.
Yeah, he went into full machine mode on Saturday. It was one of the most spectacular things I've seen on a golf course from an Irish golfer, especially in recent times.
I've never seen more people with tears in their eyes. Media, family, general public, just this genuine happiness that I think people always thought he had the talent, but just for even he was 50 to 1. 50 to 1 this week. You're looking at him. He'd won the North of Ireland here 12, 13 years ago, thinking, like, just underestimated.
And he was confident, wasn't he?
Yeah, like he had to have been. And like, I mean, the way he spoke in the press conference after Saturday as well, like with any other golfer, you're like, oh, careful now. But with Shane Lowry, you're like, he's clearly got his head right. He says that he's much happier being in contention now than he was at Oakmont in 2016. He can sleep on the lead way better than he used to. But just on that point, do the world media, people who don't know Shane Lowry as well, underestimate him because he's such a nice guy? They're like, well, this is the affable chap who comes down the home stretch, had that chance at Oakmont in 2016, but in terms of being a world-class golfer, perhaps is underestimated. And this will change the worldview of Shane Lowry.
Oh, there's no question. This is massively going to change the worldview. The way golf is, and we're all guilty of this, if you're not a top 10 player in the world, everybody else is probably underestimated. You go into every major expecting, and generally they deliver Koepka, Spieth, Rose, Dustin Johnson, and you don't spend a huge amount of time talking about this. I was chatting with John Duggan last night, about who we had backed, and like both of us were saying, if we weren't Irish, Shane Lowry is the first man you would have tipped to win this tournament, because you're always looking for an inside track, and he's played the course, he knew it well. You look at his form, he's had the best 6 months of his life. From the victory in Abu Dhabi, he had a second place finish in America, third place finish at the Canadian Open, and then actually down at the Irish Open, played really well on the first day and got sick. Like, that was the problem for him. He actually went home that night, got up the next morning and just didn't feel well. And I noticed, and there was a definite change in him at the Irish Open this year from previous years. This was his 10th he's played as a professional, so a 10th where he's been known. And he's definitely struggled to deal with the expectation and the pressure, and the expectation for his time, I think, as much as anything else, because everyone feels they own a bit of him. Everyone wants an autograph, everyone wants to talk to him for 5 minutes. He knows so many people in Irish golf that, countless interviews after the last 10 years where he's been cranky and he's been annoyed, and it's just all got a bit too much for him. The Irish Open this year just had a permanent smile on his face. And that was the one thing that stood out for me, particularly on Friday and again yesterday. We all had smiles on our face. He had this permanent smile over the 4 days that nothing was going to get to him. And on Friday I followed him for a couple of hours, and the weather again wasn't great, and he was playing with Phil Mickelson, and there were these long breaks with slow stuff, and they were standing in every tee box for 5 or 6 minutes, and he had this just giant grin on his face, sort of scanning the crowd, which I think he does to sort of distract himself and see who he knows. And we'll probably get onto the influence of his caddy. Caddy never stopped talking to him at any stage over the 4 days.
Yeah, it seemed that way.
And then Saturday, he almost seemed delirious in the post-round interviews. I was listening to one of his interviews after the round on Saturday with 5 Live, and he's like, this isn't me. He's like, this isn't golf. Like, listen to this. When everyone's singing there's only one Shane Lowry and there's hundreds and thousands of people singing Ole Ole behind. It's like, this isn't golf. It's not. Like, the Ryder Cup, you might get that partisan nature.
Yes,
But at an Open Championship, for so many people to be behind one person. And my only concern was, how do you bring yourself down? Because the feeling was he'd went into the press conference, and you've probably seen the answer where he's like, I'm just talking gobbledygook. He can't get it out. That he just couldn't understand that. And I think that's the one thing we all struggle to get. Like, that's sort of Rory McIlroy stuff. It's not Shane Lowry stuff. And for him to be in the middle of that, and then actually to manage to get to sleep, I don't think he slept very well, he said, understandably, on Saturday night. And to go out and perform to that level was just incredible.
Let's hear from Shane Lowry yesterday. He was speaking in the aftermath of that incredible win at Royal Portrush.
No, I struggled last night because we finished very late last night, and again I got out of here, it was like 8:30 or 8:20 or so, and got back to the house, had food, and like went to bed at 11 o'clock, but obviously I didn't sleep very well. I'd say I slept for about 4 or 5 hours last night, and I normally throw a good 8-10 hours at it, so wake up in the middle of the night, thinking about all sorts, and I was awake at 6:30 this morning. So the tea time moved forward was quite nice. It was a couple hours earlier than it was yesterday. Look, I think I knew that I had to fight to the bitter end today, and that's what helped me, and that's where I struggled in Oakmont. And I always said after Oakmont, if I could have got the last 4 holes back, I'd give anything to be standing on the 14 fairway again. I had a wedge in my hand on 14, and I always said I'd give anything to be standing there again. And I knew today that I was going to have to fight to the very end, and I did. I didn't let myself, I said I let myself think about it on 17, enjoy it, but I still, you're still hitting shots, and you're, links golf, bunkers, rough. All sorts can happen out there. So I let myself really enjoy it going down 18. But before that, I was really just fighting till the end.
It seemed that he allowed himself to enjoy it on Saturday as well, which we've already kind of mentioned. And I think that kind of comes from just the way he looks at the world now. Golf obviously meant a hell of a lot more to him in terms of his identity as a person 3 years ago. Now it doesn't matter as much. And that doesn't mean that he doesn't care deeply about it. Like, he talks about the most important things in his life and what his dreams are, and it's to have a healthy family in 10, 15 years' time.
Fatherhood has probably helped him, in a massive way. I don't know the guy personally or anything like that, but from reading all the stuff, and I remember he did an interview with you, I think it was last year, and I remember I was driving home listening to it, and he sounded genuinely depressed. He sounds so frustrated and so annoyed with his game. And I remember him saying to you, I don't know what's going on. I actually don't know what's happening.
Which is the worst thing for a golfer. That if you have a problem and you know what it is, you can get your coach
of an injury, of whatever it is. But I actually was saying to myself, I said, that sounds like a guy who's actually going to pack in the game. And I think he actually said in the interview, I'd consider, he was that, it was absolutely, the interview was pouring with emotion. And to do then what he has done, as you say, to have a smile on his face, it's kind of, it's chicken and egg. How do you get into a situation where you're leading in the Open, you're leading overnight, but you have the mentality to say, actually, I'm just going to go out and enjoy this. Still play golf, but obviously have things in perspective. So his ability to do what he did yesterday would never have come if he didn't get himself out of that black hole the way he did. And you know what I love about him? He's never really spoken about it. He hasn't kind of gilded the lily at all, saying, I went to it and did it. He's just kind of got on with it. Obviously he's had a lot of help, or he's got his head right from whatever way, but he hasn't kind of put it out there. He's always trusted in his game. He's a obviously brilliantly natural golfer, and I'd say he probably removed himself. I don't know if you know the answer. I'd say he's not the type who just buried himself back into it, because he sounded to me in that interview that he was actually sick of actually playing rounds.
Well, he touched on that in the press conference afterwards. So 2 weeks after we spoke to him at the Irish Open, he goes to Carnoustie and he misses the cut for the 4th year in a row at the Open, and he bombs out of the place. He said he sat in his car and cried because he didn't see any way out. Again, questioning his future in the game. There's been changes. The most obvious one was that he changed his caddy, and he brought in Bo Martin, who was a vastly experienced caddy. I know Peter Lowry recommended him. He was a former caddy for Peter, and Shane, being the gentleman he is, didn't want to say, well, listen, the change of caddy is what done it, because he'd worked with his previous caddy for so long. But I think he needs distraction when he's playing golf, because you say, Shane is one of the most natural golfers out there. His swing is his own thing. He doesn't need a coach there making vast technical changes. And being on the range over the last few days and watching some of the world's best players and how they interact with their coach, Pete Cowan is a lot of their coaches. So he's sort of wandering around between 2 or 3 players, not really saying much, just having a chat, just mentally trying to say the right thing. Neil Manship never stops talking to Shane on the range. I can't imagine, again, it's a technical thing. They just seem to constantly be in a sort of little bit of small talk here and there. His caddy, again, even on the range, almost just sort of taking Shane away from himself, that he's not standing over the ball massively thinking about this. And again, you're standing 10 feet back. You could be reading way too much into this. But I thought it was the most notable thing of following him around was the amount of conversation between him and his caddy. Phil Mickelson, he was in a strange place this week considering he hadn't eaten for a week, but Mickelson's caddy is his brother Tim, who's also a brilliant coach, and the two of them barely spoke to each other the whole way around. Phil wasn't in the mood, obviously, but and caddies and players like Harry Diamond and Rory McIlroy don't constantly talk. Rory likes to do his own thing. On the second, third greens, when the pressure could have been on, constant conversation, not just the odd word here. It felt as though Bo never stopped talking.
And was he talking about the actual...
No, I would imagine it was the last thing. There must be the odd little bit of a pep talk here and there. And I think even on 18, Shane said that Bo said, look, you need to finish this off, when he was celebrating walking up the fairway. Let's get this done. Let's not take 9 shots now to get down from the edge of the green. But
tap,
never stop talking. And obviously just, again, keeping his mind off, because he doesn't have an issue there. When it comes to the technical skills of it, he doesn't have an issue. And there's a million little things that build into what made it so special, but one of them is, and you're the sports person here, so how rare it is, what you touched on Saturday, that a sports person sort of embraces everything that's going around. It would have been so easy, and so many players on Saturday night when all hell was breaking loose, to just put their head down, and do the GEA player interview and go, look, the job's not done. Look, everyone just needs to calm down a little bit. There's a long way to go. 4 shots is nothing. And instead he went, and he said that to Bo as well, walking down 16-17 on Saturday evening. Let's enjoy this. This may never happen to us again. And he's probably right. Even though they're talking about coming back to Portrush as early as 2024 now, it was such a success, which is incredible to think it could be back in 5 years.
Because even if it is back, and even if he wins again, he may have to actually play a bit of golf on the 17th and 18th to actually win it. So to actually enjoy it in that perspective,
he embraced
truly
it, obviously. And obviously, again, it's a read through from what he has done in his own psychology in his own life, that he embraced it. I'd say he's the type of fella saying, I have a wife, I have a healthy child, I'm in a great place. Isn't this a great place to be? Because as you say, a lot of fellas do that whole fear thing where they're saying, oh, listen, we won't worry about it, but they're actually thinking about it constantly. We just put our head down, we have to win tomorrow or whatever it is. But actually, you're nearly tipping your hat to fear there. You're not actually embracing the whole event that is the next day. It was fantastic to hear.
The fatherhood aspect will be interesting to dig into a little bit. It might be a dadcast topic down the line because, funny enough, very soon after his daughter was born, he ended up moving to America because he got his PGA Tour card, and that is what sort of sparked this slump, that he was spending a huge amount of time away from Ireland. Now, his wife and child were there a lot of the time, but he was suddenly away from home, and part of that could easily be he's just had a child, he's had this opportunity. You think, I need to provide for this house, I need to go and make the most successful career I possibly can, and okay, I need to be away from them for 4 weeks, but I'm doing the right thing for my family. We're actually losing his PGA Tour card, moving back to Ireland, and he's probably spent almost as much time in America because he's had such a good season. But the fact he's based here, he feels he's around, it probably got him to reset and go, you know what, this is my home, these are my people.
This is what I'm comfortable with.
I'll go and play golf, and if I do well, good and well. But because it must be a part of it. Certainly losing his PGA Tour card and having to be over in Florida, and then you're based in Florida, you're flying all over America, you're home for a day and you're back on a flight again, whereas having his base here in Dublin, I would say, was a huge thing.
But he referenced her, didn't he? I think on Saturday, did he say, listen, whatever happens, she'll be there at the end and I'll see her. That's for someone even to think that, when you're in the zone, you say, well, actually, no, that's a very important thing for me. That's massive.
And he wanted that. In Abu Dhabi when he won in January, which sparked this.
He made sure they were there at the 18th.
And he had said again to his wife, Wendy, that morning, I want her there. Either way, I want to know that no matter what happens here, that this isn't, anyone who watches PGA Tour golf knows the way this is set up. The Americans love the schmaltz of the kids are all there. As I mean, Jason Day's son Dash is going to be 18 and he's going to be forced to stand on the edge of the 18th and give Dad a big emotional hug, whether he likes it or not. But that actually Shane Lowry was, I don't just want her there if I win. I want her there knowing that actually, no matter what happens here, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, tonight when I go home, it doesn't matter that much. You're kidding yourself in a lot of ways, but if you kid yourself and it works out this way.
Let's hear a little bit more from Shane Lowry.
I think the people around me really believed that I could, which helps me an awful lot. I do remember a lot of times in the past when I'm down on myself and serious chats with Neil, he always reminded me that he always said that I was going to win one. At least one, he said. So, I suppose when you have the people around you really believe in you, it helps you an awful lot. So, obviously, look, I'm Irish. I grew up holing putts on the putting green back home to win the Open. Like it was always the Open, wasn't it? And I watched Paddy winning his 2 Opens. I mean, I didn't even know him back then, and I'm obviously very good friends with him. To have him there on the 18th, you go into Paddy's house and his Claret Jug is sitting there on the kitchen table, and I'm going to have one on my kitchen table now as well. So I said that to him. That's going to be quite nice. And was there another question there? Oh, Carnoustie, how far? Yeah, look, that just shows how fickle golf is. Golf's a weird sport and you never know what's around the corner, and that's why you always kind of need to remind yourself, and you need to have the people there to remind you that you need to just fight through the bad times. And I sat in the car park in Carnoustie on the Thursday. It was probably almost like a year ago right to this week, and I cried. My my golf wasn't my friend at the time. It was, you know, something that it was becoming very stressful and was weighing on me, and I just didn't like doing it. And look, 12, what a difference a year makes, I suppose.
It's great that Patrick Harrington's kitchen counter, which you've seen first hand, Nathan, God, I mentioned there with his Claret Jug.
Two of them.
You're going to have to get the tour around Shane Lowry's gaff now to get to see the Claret Jug. Like that's an interesting relationship, Lowry and Harrington. Like he was one of the first people to greet him off the green yesterday. Got a huge cheer as well.
Remember, Harrington missed the cut.
Yeah. So he's hung around
because he knew Lowry was in contention.
Like it's I'd imagine it's a very interesting. I'd love to be a fly on the wall for some of those conversations because they seem to approach golf in such a massively different way. One's like a complete perfectionist, very meticulous about his planning, whereas Lowry, as we've just discussed, is somebody who needs the distraction to actually thrive in the golf course.
Yeah.
Well, but he also, what Lowry loves is the competitive side of it. He needs to be playing for something. And Graham McDowell, we might hear, touched on this, that something he has probably brought to that sort of Irish circuit and why he fitted in so quickly. And Peter Lowry was talking yesterday about playing his first ever practice round as a professional with Shane Lowry. So they have these Tuesday, Wednesday, basically chipping competitions. Money, they're not quite Phil Mickelson on his Tuesday for 50 grand money games, but Lowry and Harrington go head to head pretty much whenever they're at a tournament on a Tuesday or Wednesday in a chipping competition.
Okay, yeah.
And like McDowell was saying, like for Shane, winning that is almost more important than winning the tournament.
Yeah.
Like getting one over on his mate. But because of that, like that's exactly the type of practice every player is looking for, where there is that intensity. And he does that with all the players. Like any opportunity, I think, to have a little bit of, in practice, to add a bit of a competitive edge. And like chipping is the best short game probably in the world away from Phil Mickelson. So it was great again to see that sort of camaraderie of Harrington and McDowell, and them being genuinely happy. They didn't just have to hang around, but that they were genuinely happy that he's joined their club. Padraig Harrington was saying down in Lahinch, we're talking about who's going to host the Irish Open, and he was saying, well, you know, hopefully Shane gets one of these and he can host it at some stage as well.
When I saw these quotes come out Saturday night, Sunday morning, I said, I really hope we get to read these out on Monday morning with just tons and tons of glee, and that's exactly what I'm going to do right now. It's Lee Westwood. He said after Saturday's round, Shane's in the lead, he's in a big lead, but no lead is big enough when the weather gets bad on a links course, and he's going to have an awful lot of pressure on him hitting in front of a home crowd, so he'll be nervous. It'll be a tough, long day for him. The last day of a major is always long, but it's going to be 100 times worse for him. Guess what, Lee Westwood? It's 100 times better for him. He's won the Open on this island. Like, come on! Like, I mean, I can see the process behind, you know, getting inside somebody's head, which, like, you don't actually see.
Everything he says is probably true. But that's not golf on, and especially Lee Westwood, who's 46 at this stage. Like, have a bit more about yourself. There's no need to say that. And also, like, there's any amount of statistics out there for players who've had top fives in majors over the last 15 years that haven't won one. Like Lee Westwood's well out in front on his own there. So I don't think Shane Lowry will give a shit about that.
No, one person who does give a shit is Brendan Lowry. You were speaking to him in the aftermath as well yesterday, Nathan.
Oh yeah.
Your son is the Open champion.
Absolutely brilliant. I just can't. I don't know. It's just I can't believe he won by 6 shots first. Anyway, you know, I know he'd be happy with his shot or whatever way he wins it, but like I just couldn't believe. And maybe the weather, I think the weather played a big part, that he wasn't used to the weather, but like everybody, I suppose he grew up weather like that and links, that it probably helped him with the, do you know what I mean, that other players didn't get up. They had, rather than
match play very early.
Yeah, rather than catching him, they couldn't catch him, so he had to fall back. So I was very happy that he dug it out and started. He started kind of nervously, probably alright, which I don't know how anybody tee off on the first tee there. I tell you, it's a nightmare.
He got it out there.
He got it out there, like, and he got a great bogey, as a matter of fact, from 7 feet, so which was, you know, and then he came back into it and he settled down and played nice, you know. Well, played well all week, anyways, played very well, you know.
There was a lot of emotional people out there, people who barely even know Shane. For you, his father, what were the emotions like, particularly when he was walking up 18, when you knew it was done?
Yeah, well, we all met it behind and sure, like, everybody was, Padraig Harrington came in, we were all there, and he said, will you all stop crying? That's what he said, like, everybody was crying, like, you think it's something, you know, serious had happened, like, but I was sure the feeling, like, that's what he dreamed about when he was playing, like any young sportsman, whatever sports to take up, to dream about things like that. And sure, What about winning your Open and the British Open in your...
You
in
literally
Ireland,
couldn't
like?
even dream it.
You can't dream it, like in Portrush, where he likes to, So, like, it's just unbelievable.
What's the party going to be like tonight? Where's the party going to be most
Haven't a clue
importantly?
now. Nobody even... I'm going over now to get a bottle of Heineken. That's where I'm going.
How does it compare to 82?
There's no comparison at all. You're different. When your son does that, like, sure, there's not too much that can... different. That was a different era that I was playing that time. So, well, that's...
Yeah.
I'm nothing I can't really say anymore.
When you think back to where he was a year ago, and he said it himself this week, leaving the Open Championship in a very, very low place.
That's
and
right, yeah.
Again, there's the other side as a father. You have to pick your words over the course of the year.
But you have to be there the whole time. That golf is so fickle sometimes. And even today there, he looked like he was going to drop a shot, and then he maybe hold the putt, and Tommy Fleetwood missed one, and he gained one. And instead of 4 shots ahead, he was 6 shots, and that kind of, golf is very funny,
Yeah. Shane had some lovely words for you when he was just after receiving the Claret Jug. He was quite emotional saying it. Like any good parents.
Is
it?
Friday.
I
was 60 last Friday.
So it's quite a weekend of celebrations.
And he says, happy birthday, Dad. And so I had to go around everything,
Is that the best birthday present you've ever got?
Absolutely. It's mental, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's insane. Go enjoy the next few days.
Thanks, guys.
That's class. That's Brendan Lowry speaking to Nathan afterwards. So, I presume that's at the end of the day. I'd say by the time you're driving down yesterday evening, the place is still hopping.
It took about nearly 4 hours to get back. The crowds trying to get back out, and they were actually coming back down to Dublin as well. The party was in Dublin city centre last night, so I hope they weren't stuck in that. Maybe somebody put on a helicopter to fly them straight through. Obviously everybody saw the moments on Sky with the immediate family and Harrington and McDowell. There was about 20 minutes later, just when he'd finished his Sky interview, and I'm not sure if anyone could hear any of his interviews on any of the television stations because everybody in the background was just roaring. It was, "Give us a wave, Shane," in the middle of the interviews. But just outside that area, a load of his mates were there, and they wouldn't let them in because they didn't have the right passes. And I'd said it was about 10 or 15 of his mates, and probably his more extended family. And eventually, after about 10 minutes, they agreed to let them in, and there's just this massive rush of about 25, probably mostly Offaly people, running towards the Sky studios and the BBC studios, and Shane appears out and all the family, and they run the other way. They all just come together, and everybody's in floods of tears. It was just, again, just the genuine happiness of so many people. You could not take your smile off your face yesterday just watching it all.
We're going to get to the back pages and the front pages in just a moment because they capture the images so well. But one question I actually haven't asked really is, what was the best part of his golf game all week?
Well, his ability to play links. Tee to green was statistically, I think, right up there with some of the great tee to green play, which was everything because the greens were slow because of the expected winds. So putting, there wasn't as much of a premium on putting as there might be certainly on, say, a PGA Tour event. But off the tee, he was a bit ragged on Saturday off the tee, but his recovery play, 17 of 18 greens on Saturday, which in links golf, even though it was benign, it's just sensational. So his iron play all weekend was exceptional. Yesterday was a different day. It was just grind it out. You're going to make mistakes. In those conditions, you're going to make mistakes. It's how you respond. Probably 2 or 3 of his best shots from the week were out of fairly deep rough where he just kept it low and just ran it up onto the green. So everyone knew he had the game for links golf, even if his Open record hadn't shown it. So I think if you were to look at it statistically, his iron play was head and shoulders above pretty much everybody else.
Right, let's tell you what's coming up this morning on OTB AM. As I say, it is a specially extended show